Cadet Zip of the Quellan Empire was having the worst day of his military career, and considering he'd only been at the Galactic Defense Academy for 3 weeks, that was saying something. He lay flat on his back, all 4 arms sprawled out in defeat, staring up at the reinforced ceiling of Training Bay 7. Around him, holographic obstacles. Music flickered and faded, the simulation finally taking pity on him and shutting down. The computerized voice announced his performance with all the enthusiasm of a funeral director. Time 18 minutes. And GT, music. And GT 43 seconds. Injuries sustained. Catastrophic. Mission status failed. Again, Zip muttered, his twin mouths both frowning in synchronized music. Misery, it had to add again. This was supposed to be the basic combat readiness course, basic, the kind of thing first-year cadets were expected to breeze through after a few attempts. Zip had tried 17 times. 17, and each attempt ended the same way. Him flat on his back, questioning every life choice that had led him to this moment. He dragged himself to his feet, his 3 feet, and shuffled toward the exit. And GT, music. And GT, trying to ignore the pitying looks from other cadets. That's when he saw him. Cadet Jake Reeves, human, effortlessly jogging out of Training Bay 8 with barely music, a scratch on him, looking like he'd just finished a light warm-up instead of the Academy's most notoriously difficult obstacle course. The same course that had music just chewed Zip up and spit him out for the 17th time. Zip's eye stalks nearly popped out of his head. No way. He checked the display board. Course 8. Advanced Mixed Terrain Combat Simulation. With hostile variables, the one they instructors specifically told first years to avoid until second semester. The one that made grown Draxian warriors weep. Time 4 minutes 12. Music. Seconds. Injuries minor. Mission status complete. Zip felt something inside him snap. Not physically, though. At this point that would have been par for the course. No. This was his pride, his dignity. Whatever was left of his confidence, all of it just snapped. He found Jake in the mess hall 20 minutes later, watching the human casually devour something that looked like it violated several biological safety protocols. Zip approached with all 4 arms raised in what he hoped music was a non-threatening gesture of desperation. Human Reeves, Zip said, his translator Chip working overtime to keep his voice from cracking. I need to know, how do you do it? How do humans train for this level of combat readiness? What's the secret? Is there a special program? Enhanced genetics, classified military conditioning from birth? Jake looked up from his meal. Was that thing actually moving? And blinked. Then he did something Zip wasn't expecting. He laughed, not a polite chuckle, a full, genuine laugh that made several nearby cadets turn and stare. Train, Jake said. And GT, music. And GT, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. Buddy, we don't train for this stuff. Zip felt hope deflating like a punctured atmosphere suit. You don't. No. Jake leaned back in his chair, grinning. We call it childhood. Zip's translator Chip made a small clicking sound as if it wasn't sure it had processed that correctly. I do not understand. Childhood is the development phase, the protected period before adult responsibilities. Yeah, Jake said, still grinning. That's when we do all this stuff. Do. What stuff? All of it. Running, jumping, falling, crashing, breaking things. And GT, music. And GT, breaking ourselves. Jake shrugged like he was discussing the weather. Standard human childhood. Really? Zip stared at him, both mouths hung. Music open, all four arms went limp at his sides. Jake wasn't joking, the human wasn't joking at all, he was completely. Music terrifyingly serious, I think. Zip said slowly, using all four music hands to count off points. Human children are given unstable that humans might be clinically insane. Jake's grin. And GT, music. And GT widened. Oh buddy, you have no idea. Jake pulled out his data pad, scrolling through what Zip assumed would be military training documentation. Instead, Jake stopped on an image of a small human child sitting on top of a skeletal metal frame with two music wheels. This, Jake said, turning the pad around. And GT, music. And GT is a bicycle. Zip leaned in, his eye stalks extending for a closer look. He analyzed the image for a full 10 seconds before his translator chip made that clicking sound. Again, that is a vehicle, Zip said carefully. Yep, a two-wheeled vehicle with no stabilization system. Correct. No anti-gravity assistance. No. Gyroscopic balance correction. No. AI-guided navigation support. Now. You're getting it. Zip's primary mouth opened, music then closed, then his secondary mouth tried. And you give these two children, usually around age 5 or 6, Jake said cheerfully, sometimes younger if the kid's really eager. My little sister got one at 4. 4, Zip repeated, his voice barely a whisper. 4 years old. Well, she had training wheels at first. Relief washed over Zip like a cool breeze. So there are safety protocols which my dad took off about 3 weeks later. Without telling her, the relief evaporated instantly. I'm sorry, what? Jake nodded like this was the most normal thing in the universe. Yeah. That's pretty standard. Parents sneak out with a wrench, remove the training wheels, and then just don't mention it. Kid gets on the bike thinking they've still got support, and surprise they don't. Zip felt his chromatic music skin shifting through colors he didn't even know represented emotions. That is psychological warfare against your own offspring. It's called learning to ride a bike. But sure, we can call it that. Jake swiped to another image. A child lying on the ground next to a fallen bicycle. Scraped knees visible. Tears streaming down their face. This is also part of the process. The child is injured. Yeah, that happens a lot actually. Scraped knees. Scraped elbows, scraped pretty much everything. I broke my arm twice learning to ride. Jake said this with something disturbingly close to fondness. Zip's mind was reeling. On my home world, childhood transportation involves cushioned anti-gravity pods with 6-axis stability, music, control, and emergency stasis fields. The possibility of falling is mathematically music reduced to 0.00003%. See, that's your problem right there, Jake said, pointing at him with what appeared to be a fried tuber of some kind. You guys never learned to fall. Why would we want to learn to fall? Because you're going to fall anyway. Might as well know how to do it right. Jake swiped through more images. Children crashing into trees, flipping over handlebars skidding across pavement. Every human kid learns the same lessons. Momentum is real, inertia doesn't care about your feelings, and gravel hurts way more than it looks like. It should. This is madness. This is Tuesday afternoon in any human neighborhood. Jake leaned forward conspiratorially. Want to know the best part? Once kids get good at riding bikes, they start doing it on purpose. Doing what on purpose? Crashing. Well, not exactly crashing, more like testing the limits. Jake's eyes got a distant look, the expression of someone remembering glory days. When I was 7, me and my friends built a ramp out of scrap wood in Tommy Richardson's driveway. Just a plank propped up on some cinder blocks. Nothing fancy. We'd ride down the hill at full speed and launch off it. Zip was almost afraid to ask, and GT, music, and GT, and I got maybe 6 ft of air before the bike twisted sideways and I came down. Shoulder first on the concrete. Jake rotated his left shoulder, making it pop. Broke my collarbone clean through. Hurt like hell. Best summer ever. You enjoyed music this? Well, not the breaking part, but the jump before it. Absolutely. Plus, everyone at school thought my cast was cool. Got like 30 signatures on it. Zip tried to process this. His species had a word for individuals who deliberately sought out pain and injury for social status. Translation came through as requires immediate psychiatric intervention. Let me make sure I understand, Zip said, slowly, using all 4 hands to count off points. Human children are given unstable 2-wheeled music vehicles with no safety systems. They are expected to fall repeatedly as part of the learning process. Once they master basic operation, they then intentionally create dangerous situations to prove something to their peers, pretty much. Yeah, and this isn't military training. Nope, just growing music up. Zip sat down heavily, his legs suddenly feeling unreliable. No wonder you people conquered half the galaxy. You're all completely insane. Jake grinned. Oh, buddy, I haven't even gotten to the playground equipment yet. Zip's eye stalks drooped. There's more, so much more. Jake pulled up a new folder on his data pad labeled childhood memories, and Zip immediately regretted every decision that had led to this conversation. Okay, so after you learn to ride a bike, your parents take you to music, a special place designed specifically for children. Jake swiped to an image of a colorful structure that looked like it had been designed by someone who fundamentally misunderstood structural safety. We call them playgrounds. Zip studied the image with growing horror. That is a training facility, recreation area. Technically, recreation, Zip repeated flatly. I see exposed metal framework at heights exceeding 3 m. I see suspended music platforms with gaps child could easily fall through. I see. Is that ladder made of chains? Oh yeah, those swing a lot. Music when you're climbing makes it harder. Jake zoomed in on a particularly disturbing piece of equipment. But check out the slide. Zip looked. It appeared to be a metal chute angled at approximately 45 degrees, a descent mechanism that seems almost reasonable, made of pure metal that sits in direct sunlight. I don't understand why that would get hot enough to cook eggs on during summer. Every human kid has burned the back of their legs on a slide at least once. It's basically a rite of passage. Zip felt his chromatic skin turning a Pale shade of green, you have children. Sit on solar radiation cooking surfaces. Not for long, they usually realize it's hot about halfway down, but by then, momentum's already got them. Jake chuckled, the sound kids make when they hit a hot slide is pretty universal, kind of a H-ow-ow-ow progression, and parents allow this. Allow it, they tell their kids music to go play and then sit on benches. Watching it happen, Jake swiped to another image, a swing set. Now these are fun, suspended seat attached to chains, no harness, no restraints. You pump your legs to go higher and higher. Zip did some quick calculations in his head based on the chain length and average gravitational constant. A child could achieve significant altitude. What prevents them from achieving a full 360 degrees rotation? Physics mostly, and self-preservation, music instinct, which honestly doesn't kick in until you're already way too high. Jake's expression turned nostalgic. Though everyone tries to go all the way around, that's the dream, never works. Though you get to about horizontal and the chains go slack and you just fall. Fall, well yeah, that's when you learn about trajectory and landing strategy. Jake pointed to a sandy area beneath the swings. That's why they put soft stuff under these things. Used to be sand, now it's usually these rubber chunks. Still hurts if you land wrong, but at least you don't get sand in your eye. Cannot hear any more about the swings. Zip interrupted, all four hands raised. Please tell me there is something in these playgrounds that doesn't involve falling. Jake's face lit up. Oh, the monkey bars. He pulled up an image of a horizontal ladder suspended about 2 m off the ground. And GT, music. And GT, children were hanging from it by their hands, moving rung to rung. This teaches upper body strength and grip endurance. Jake explained, also teaches you that sometimes your hands just give out and you fall directly onto your back and get the wind knocked out of you. Of course it does, Zip muttered, but wait, there's music more. Jake's grin turned absolutely wicked. The piece de resistance, the merry-go-round. He pulled up an image that made Zip's blood run cold. It was a circular platform mounted on a central pivot point. No restraints, no safety barriers, just music, a flat disc that spun freely. Children, Jake said with disturbing enthusiasm, grab onto the handles. Other children push it to make it spin faster. There is no speed limit. There is no automatic shutoff. It just keeps spinning until someone either lets go or falls off. Zip's voice came out as a horrified whisper. That is a centrifugal force generator operated by unsupervised minors. Basically, yeah. The goal is to spin it music so fast that people can't hold on anymore. I got flung 15 FT into a sandbox once, landed vase first. And GT, music. And GT had sand in my ears for a week. How many children die on these devices annually? Die? Oh, hardly any. We're pretty resilient. Lots of broken bones and concussions, but a deep, gravelly voice interrupted from behind them. I thought human parks were prisoner of war training camps. They both turned to music. See Instructor Krell, a massive Draxian warrior with scales like titanium plating and enough combat commendations music to fill a book. He was looking at Jake's data pad with what might have been respect or horror. With Draxians and GT, music. And GT, it was hard to tell, just regular Playground, sir, Jake said. Krell's eyes narrowed. You're telling me your species does this voluntarily, for fun? Yes, sir. The instructor made a rumbling sound. Deep in his chest. I have fought in 17 campaigns across 9 systems. I have seen horrors that would break lesser species, but this. He gestured at the merry-go-round image. This explains so much about humans. Zip found his voice. Did no one try to stop this? And GT, music. And GT, were there no safety regulations? No. Concerned authorities, Jake shook his head, smiling. Stop it, dude. Our parents stood on the sidelines taking photos. And if you cried, they told you to walk it off. Zip put his head in all 4 hands. I will never pass the combat course. My species didn't evolve for this. We're not built for this kind of sustained childhood trauma. Hey, don't sell yourself short, Jake said encouragingly. You just got to think like a human kid. When you see an obstacle, don't ask if you should music, do it. Ask if it looks fun. Nothing about breaking bones sounds fun. Not with that attitude. It doesn't. Instructor Krell rumbled again. Definitely respect this time. Carry on. Cadet Reeves, Cadet Zip, I suggest you pay attention. The humans clearly understand something about combat readiness that the rest of us are only beginning to grasp. As the instructor walked away, Zip looked at Jake with newfound horror. There's more, isn't there? Jake's grin widened. Oh, we haven't even gotten to organized sports yet. Zip made a sound that his translator chip struggled to classify somewhere between a groan and a plea for mercy. Sports? You mean organized physical activities with supervision and rules, correct? Music? Please tell me there are rules. Oh, there are definitely rules, Jake said, his tone suggesting this would not be the reassurance Zip was hoping for. But here's the thing about human sports. Rules are less about safety and more about making sure everyone knows exactly how you're supposed to hurt each other. Supposed to. Zip's secondary mouth hung open while his primary one tried to form words. Are you saying violence is codified into your recreational activities? I mean, when you put it like that, it sounds bad. Jake pulled up a new folder on his data pad. Let me start with one of the gentler ones. This is dodgeball. The image showed a gymnasium divided by a line on each side, small humans held red rubber spheres. The caption read, Lincoln Elementary Championship Finals. The objective, Jake explained, music with the enthusiasm of a military strategist, is to throw these balls at the opposing team as hard as you possibly music can. If you hit someone, they're out. Last team standing wins. Zip stared at the screen. You weaponized rubber spheres. Technically, they're foam-filled music, but yeah, basically. And here's the beautiful part. It's not just about hitting people, it's about hitting them when they're not looking. Speed and surprise are your best friends. Jake zoomed in on a child's face frozen in the moment of impact. See that? That's Billy Morrison taking one right to the face. Gave him a nosebleed. He cried for like 10 minutes. And this Billy Morrison, he was taken for medical treatment, removed from the activity. Nah, the gym teacher gave him some tissues and told him to sit out for 5 minutes. Then he went back in. Jake swiped to another photo. The same child. Bloodstained tissues shoved up his nostrils, holding a ball with murderous intent in his eyes. Got his revenge. 2. Nailed Kevin Chen right in the Stomach. Kevin threw up a little. Zip. Felt his legs wobble. You're educational. Institution sanction this, sanction it. They organize it, we had dodgeball. Tournaments, music, brackets, playoffs. The whole thing, teachers would ref the games, making sure we followed the rules. Like not aiming for the head, Jake. Paused, I mean we still aimed for the head but we weren't supposed to. I need to sit down. You're already sitting, then I need to sit harder. Zip gripped the edge of the table with all four hands. Surely dodgeball is the worst of it. Surely your species didn't create anything more violent than weaponized projectiles thrown at children, Jake's expression suggested. Zip had just said something adorably naive. Oh buddy, dodgeball is like the tutorial level. Let me tell you about football. Football, Zip repeated slowly. A ball operated by feet. That sounds almost civilized. Different football. American football. Jake pulled up an image that made Zip's eye stalks retract. In self-defense, each player wears armor, helmet, shoulder pads, protective gear, you know. Why? Because the activity is dangerous. Because the activity is deliberately dangerous. The goal is to carry this oblong ball to the other end of the field while 11 massive humans try to physically stop you by any means necessary. The image showed a pile of armored children, limbs tangled, bodies colliding in midair. It looked less like recreation and more like a war crime in progress. The average play, Jake continued, involves children running at each other at full speed and colliding with approximately 5 to 100 to 1 to 1,000 lb of force, tackles, blocks, hits. All music legal, all encouraged. Zip's chromatic skin had cycled through his entire emotional color spectrum, and music started inventing new ones. Injuries constantly, concussions, broken fingers, sprained ankles, dislocated shoulders. I played linebacker for 3 years, broke my nose twice same season. Jake touched his slightly crooked nose with something resembling pride. Coach said I had heart, also said I needed to learn to keep my head up, but mostly the heart thing. Your coach encouraged you to continue after multiple severe facial fractures. Well, yeah, we had a championship to win. Couldn't let the team down. Jake scrolled through action shots of children violently colliding. Plus, there's this thing called the playoff mentality. Basically, if you can walk, you can play. I saw a kid score a touchdown with a separated shoulder once. Didn't even know it was separated until after the game. Zip tried to imagine explaining this to the Quellen Council of Child Development. They'd have him committed. This cannot be legal. Not only is it legal, parents pay hundreds of dollars for equipment and registration fees so their kids can play. Jake grinned. Friday nights during football season, entire towns show up to watch children give each other minor brain injuries. It's a whole thing. Popcorn, hot dogs, marching bands, very festive. I think I'm experiencing a psychological break. Wait until you hear about hockey. Jake didn't wait for permission, just pulled up a new image. Children on ice, skates, holding sticks, chasing a small music black disc. All the violence of football but on ice with weapons in. The projectile moves at approximately 1 to 100 miles per hour. Zip's translator chip made a sound like it was considering self-terminating. Weapons, the sticks, they're for hitting the puck. That's the rubber disc thing. But they also get used for, well, let's Call it aggressive, defensive music. Positioning. Jake showed a video clip of two children dropping their sticks and punching each other while referees just watched. Fighting is technically illegal, but there's this understanding that sometimes you've just got to drop the gloves and settle things. Drop the gloves. Zip's voice went up in music octave. You're telling me sanctioned combat breaks out during children's sporting events? I mean, sanctioned music is a strong word. You get a penalty for it. 5 minutes in the penalty box. Jake shrugged. Music, but yeah, it happens pretty regularly. My buddy Derek lost 2 teeth in a fight. When he was 12, his mom made him wear a mouth guard after that. After the tooth loss. Well, you don't know you need extra protection music until something bad happens, right? That's just common sense. Zip was running rapid calculations based on dodgeball, football, and hockey alone. The human childhood injury rate must be catastrophic. Your species should have gone extinct from recreational activities alone. Now we're tough, bounce back pretty quick. Jake leaned back, stretching. Plus all this stuff teaches you important skills: pain tolerance, spatial awareness, music, how to take a hit and keep moving, teamwork under pressure, life skills. Sure, I use stuff I learned in sports all the time. Just yesterday in the combat sim, when I had to dodge that plasma turret while carrying the objective. That's basically every football play I ever ran. See something coming, adjust trajectory. Music, don't stop moving, push through contact. Zip's mind was reeling. Every childhood activity Jake had described would be classified as criminal negligence on Queller Prime, but here sat Jake Reeves, casually explaining how childhood violence prepared him for military excellence. I have one question, Zip said weakly. Shoot. Did your parents did they know about all this, the injuries, the violence, and GT, music, and GT, the constant physical danger? Jake laughed. Know about it, dude. They drove us to the games, signed the permission slips, paid the fees, brought orange slices for halftime. My dad recorded all my football games on music. His camera still watches them. Sometimes watches his offspring sustain repeated traumatic injuries. Well, when you put it like that, it sounds weird. Jake thought for a moment. He prefers to call it watching me develop character. Zip put his head down on the table, all 4 arms spread in defeat. I will never understand humans. Hey, I haven't even told you about karate yet. Zip's head shot up. Karate, martial arts training. My parents enrolled me when I was 8, spent 6 years learning how to punch, kick, and grapple effectively. Jake's eyes got that distant, nostalgic look again. Twice a week I'd go to a building where an adult would teach me and 20 other kids music, how to break boards with our bare hands and incapacitate opponents with joint locks. Your parents paid someone to teach you combat skills as a child for discipline and respect, Jake said, as if this explanation made perfect sense. Also, it was fun. Got to spar with other kids, test yourself in tournaments. I won 2nd place in the regional championship when I was 11. Took a roundhouse kick to the ribs in the finals that I still remember vividly. Zip's voice came out as barely a whisper. Music, your species teaches offspring hand-to-hand combat techniques for fun. Well, yeah. Jake looked genuinely confused by the question, how else would we settle playground disputes? You can't just use words for everything. Yes, you can. That's exactly what words are for. Several nearby cadets turned to look at Zip's outburst. He didn't care anymore. His entire understanding of civilized child rearing had been demolished in the span of 20 minutes. Jake patted him on the shoulder with what might have been sympathy. Look, I get it. It sounds intense, but this is just normal human childhood. Every kid I knew growing up did at least music, 2 or 3 of these things. Some did all of them plus more. Built character, made us tough, taught us how to push through adversity. It taught you that pain is normal and safety is optional. I mean, Jake considered this. Yeah, actually that's pretty accurate, and look where it got us. Most successful military species in the Galactic Defense Academy. Zip couldn't argue with that. He'd seen the statistics. Humans had the highest combat readiness scores, fastest reaction times, and best performance under stress. They dominated every physical trial and excelled in crisis situations. And now he knew why. Because every single human arrived at the academy with 18+ years of survival training disguised as growing up. They called it childhood. The rest of the galaxy would call it systematic desensitization to pain and danger. There's more music, isn't there? Zip asked, though he wasn't sure he could handle any additional panicles. Doc. Information. Jake grinned. Well, we haven't talked about what we ate yet. Zip's eye stalks drooped in surrender. Of course there's more. The mess hall had started serving the evening meal, and Zip watched with morbid fascination music as Jake loaded his tray with what could only be described as a biological hazard sampler platter, some kind of protein patty that glistened suspiciously under the fluorescent lights, a gelatinous music substance that wobbled with concerning independence, and a liquid that might have been soup or might have been a cleaning solution. Honestly, it was hard to music tell. You know what's funny? Zip said, desperate to change the subject from organized childhood violence. The one thing I've noticed about humans at the academy is that none of you ever complain music about the food. Jake looked down at his tray, then back at Zip. Should we be complaining? Yes. Zip gestured music at his own meal, a carefully sealed container of nutritionally balanced Queller cuisine that had been sterilized, temperature controlled, and molecularly verified for purity. This mess hall serves 17 different species. The cross-contamination risks alone should be causing constant illness. Draxians get food poisoning at least once a week. The Fexians won't even eat here anymore after the incident with the thermal regulators. Jake picked up his fork and poked at the protein patty. It jiggled. Seems fine to me. It jiggled, Jake. Food should not jiggle independently. I mean, Jell-O jiggles. Jell-O's great. Jake took a bite of the patty, chewed thoughtfully, and swallowed. Little rubbery but not bad. Reminds me of school cafeteria food. Zip felt that familiar sense of dread creeping back. School cafeteria, tell me about this. Oh man, school lunch was its own adventure. Jake's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm that Zip had learned to fear. See, when you're a kid, your parents either pack you a lunch or you buy whatever the cafeteria is serving that day. And cafeteria food is, well, it's an experience. An experience. Zip repeated flatly. Music. Yeah, like Mystery Meat Mondays, they serve these meat patties, never specified what animal, just meat with some kind of gravy situation, tasted fine, but nobody really knew what they were eating. Jake took another bite of his current mystery meat, clearly unbothered by the parallel. Then there were the hot dogs. Hot dogs, Zip's translator chip. Process this for a moment, canines. That have been heated. No, they're called hot dogs, but they're not actually dog, probably. They're these tubes of processed meat, origin unclear, ingredients debatable. But every human kid has eaten approximately 3,000 of them by the time they graduate high school. Zip pulled up a database entry on his own data pad. According to Galactic Food Safety Standards, any meat product without clear species identification and ingredient transparency music is classified as Class 4 hazardous consumption. Sounds about right. Jake showed zero concern, but they taste pretty good with mustard. That doesn't make it better. Look, human food safety standards are more music like suggestions. Guidelines, really. Jake leaned forward conspiratorially. Let me tell you about the 5-second rule. The what now? If you drop food on the ground, you have approximately 5 seconds to pick it up before it's considered contaminated. If you grab it within that window, it's still totally fine to eat. Zip's chromatic skin shifted to a color that roughly translated to existential horror. That's not how bacteria work. That's not how any of this works. Contamination is instantaneous upon contact with non-sterile surfaces. Yeah, but 5 seconds though. Jake said this like it was a completely reasonable counter-argument to basic music. Microbiology. Do human children die from this practice? Die? No. Get stomach ache sometimes, sure, but that's how you build up immunity. Jake counted off on his fingers. Floor, food, drinking from other kids' water bottles, sharing utensils, eating things that have been in the fridge for questionable amounts of time, all part of growing up. Zip was doing rapid calculations in his head. On Queller Prime, our food is grown in sterile hydroponic facilities, music packaged in sanitized environments, and consumed within optimal freshness windows. Any deviation from this protocol results in immediate gastrointestinal distress. Our immune systems are calibrated for purity. See, that's your problem right there. Human immune systems are calibrated for chaos. Jake pulled out his data pad and showed Zip an image of what appeared to be a small street vendor. This is a hot dog cart found on virtually every human street corner. The hot dogs sit in water of dubious temperature for unknown durations. The condiments are exposed to open air and ambient bacteria. Preparation surface is cleaned occasionally. This is a biological weapon. This is a Tuesday lunch in New York City. Jake swiped to another image, a convenience store interior, and this is where we get gas station sushi. Gas station sushi. Zip's translator made that clicking sound again, as if hoping it had misheard. Yeah, raw fish music prepared at a fuel station usually sits in a refrigerated case for anywhere from a few hours to a few days. You grab it, pay for it, eat it in your car. Jake shrugged. Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes you regret your choices. Music. It's kind of a gamble, which honestly makes it more exciting. Exciting. Foodborne illness is exciting to you. I Mean, not the illness part. But there's something about eating. Questionable convenience store sushi at 2:00 a.m. and just seeing what happens. Builds character. Zip was beginning to understand that. Builds character was human code for. Probably shouldn't survive this, but somehow does. Let me make sure I understand your for the species. Approach to nutrition, Zip said, trying to maintain some semblance of scientific composure. You regularly consume food of unknown origin, dubious freshness, and questionable preparation standards. You have a rule about eating food that has touched the ground. You consider food poisoning a normal part of existence. When you list it out like that, it sounds irresponsible, Jake admitted, but think about it this way. Every meal is basically immune system training. Your body learns to handle bacteria, mild toxins, questionable ingredients. By the time you're an adult, and GT, music, and GT, your stomach can process pretty much anything. Well, mostly anything. I had a buddy, basic training, who ate a raw scorpion on a dare, threw up for like an hour, but he was fine the next day. He ate a scorpion for a dare. Yeah, that's important context. Jake took a sip of his soup/cleaning solution. But here's the thing about human childhood. Food experiences, they're communal. We'd sit at lunch tables and trade items. Like I'd trade my sandwich for someone else's chips, my apple for their cookies. Food trading with other children. Zip's eye stalks were quivering. Different children with different exposure histories, different hygiene standards, different bacterial colonies in their saliva. Exactly. Maximum exposure, maximum immunity building. Jake's expression turned nostalgic. There was this whole economy around it too. Certain snacks were more valuable than others. A kid with good trade items was basically lunch table royalty. I once traded a Twinkie for a whole pizza slice. Best deal I ever made. What is a Twinkie? A cream-filled sponge cake that has a shelf life of approximately forever. Some people say they're basically indestructible. Found some in my grandma's pantry once that were older than me, still edible. Zip made a sound like air escaping from a damaged hull. Older than you? I mean, they tasted a little stale, but stop, just stop talking. Zip held up all four hands in surrender. Every time you explain something about human childhood, it gets worse. You're telling me that human children conduct biological warfare, training on themselves through food trading. Again, when you phrase it like that, and GT, music, and GT, and that you consume preserved foods that outlast their intended consumers. Grandma's Twinkies were really more of an experiment, and that your entire music species treats food contamination as a game. Jake paused, considering. You know what? Yeah, that's actually pretty music accurate. A nearby cadet, a Varelian with 6 tentacles and a highly sensitive digestive music system, leaned over from the next table. Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. Are you seriously telling us that humans intentionally consume contaminated food to build immunity? Not intentionally contaminated, Jake clarified. More like we're not too worried about a little contamination. It happens, you deal with it, you move on. I require 17 different digestive enzyme supplements just to eat academy food, the Varelian said, gesturing at his tray of specially prepared cuisine. 1. Instance of cross-contamination and I'm. Music hospitalized for 3 days. Yeah, but think of all the time we save. Not worrying about that stuff, music. Jake countered, I can eat pretty much. Anything, anywhere, anytime. And GT, music. And GT, yesterday's leftovers, fine, street. Vendor food in a sketchy part of town. Probably fine, that thing growing in the back of the fridge that nobody remembers. Buying. Might be fine, worth a shot. Worth a shot. The Varelian's tentacles recoiled in. Horror. Zip found himself nodding in solidarity with the Varelian. It was comforting to know he wasn't the only species utterly baffled by human survival strategies. Here's another good one, Jake continued, apparently mistaking their horror for interest. School cafeteria milk came in these little cartons, had an expiration date printed on them, but sometimes kids would forget about them in their lockers. Find them weeks later, all bloated and fermenting. We called them milk bombs. Please don't tell me you consumed fermented dairy products, Zip begged. Consume? No. Use as weapons during food fights? Absolutely. Food fights? Oh yeah, that's a whole other thing. When the lunch monitors weren't paying attention, someone would throw a piece of food across the cafeteria, and then it would just music escalate, food flying everywhere, kids ducking under tables. Total chaos usually lasted about 90 seconds before the adults shut it down. Jake smiled at the memory. Got detention twice for food fights. Worth it. The Varelian cadet looked at Zip with something resembling pity. You're trying to compete with this species that weaponizes expired dairy and treats lunch as combat training. I'm beginning to think combat readiness isn't the problem, Zip said weakly. The problem is that humans have been training for survival in ways the rest of us can't even comprehend, can't comprehend or won't comprehend, the Varelian countered. Because honestly, I don't want to understand a species that considers food poisoning a learning opportunity. That's fair, Jake acknowledged completely unbothered, but look at the results. How many humans do you see in the medical bay for food-related music illness? Zip and the Varelian exchanged glances. The answer was 0. They never saw humans in medical for dietary issues. You've created digestive systems that can process anything through exposure to everything, Zip said, the realization hitting him. Your childhood isn't just physical conditioning and pain tolerance training, it's full-spectrum biological music warfare preparation, if you want to get technical about it, Jake said, finishing his mysterious protein patty. Yeah, by the time a human hits 18, we've been exposed to music, so many different bacteria, viruses, questionable food items, and environmental hazards that our immune systems are basically combat veterans. Meanwhile, the Varelian said sadly, I cannot even drink water that hasn't been pH balanced to 7.2. Jake patted the Varelian's tentacles sympathetically. Hey, different species, different strategies. You guys have other advantages. Like he trailed off clearly, struggling to think of any. We have excellent color discrimination, the Varelian offered weakly. There you go. That's great for art and stuff. Zip slumped in his seat, all 4 arms hanging limply. I just wanted to know how to pass the basic combat course. Instead, I've learned that my entire species' approach to child development is fundamentally Incompatible with military. Excellence, not incompatible, Jake. Corrected, just different, you guys. Focused on safety and optimization, we. Focused on not dying despite our best efforts to do dangerous stuff. Both valid approaches, yours just doesn't translate as well to combat scenarios because combat scenarios require people who grew up treating danger as entertainment and contamination as character building. Now you're getting music it, Jake. Stood up with his empty tray, same time. Tomorrow I can tell you about summer camp survival training, summer camp. What? But Jake was already walking away, leaving Zip and the Varelian to contemplate the absolute insanity of human child-rearing practices. I need to file a report with my homeworld, the Varelian said quietly. They need to know that we're not music, losing to superior technology or better strategy. We're losing to a species that survived childhood music through sheer stubborn refusal to die from obviously dangerous activities. Zip nodded slowly. Music. I think I understand now why the Academy's training seems easy to humans. After dodgeball, football, playground equipment, and expired dairy products, simulated combat scenarios must feel almost safe by comparison. Music. At least in the simulations, nobody's trying to feed you mystery meat. Jake would probably eat anyway. Oh, absolutely. They sat in silence for a moment, processing everything they'd learned. Finally, Zip spoke. Do you think we can learn to think like them? To approach danger the way they do? The Varelian's tentacles curled. Thoughtfully, I don't know, but I think we have to try. And GT, music. And GT, because clearly whatever humans are doing works, it works. Zip agreed, but I'm not sure I'd call it sane. Perhaps sanity is overrated in military applications. Zip couldn't music argue with that. The next morning, Zip stood at the entrance to Training Bay 7 with a feeling he'd never experienced before, something almost resembling confidence, or maybe it was just resignation. At this point the two felt remarkably similar. He'd spent the entire night running through everything Jake had told him: the bicycles, the playgrounds, the sports, the food, all of it. Every terrifying, illogical, completely insane aspect of human childhood. And somewhere around 3:00 a.m., something had clicked in his brain. Humans didn't train for war, they survived childhood, and if he wanted to pass this course, if he wanted to compete with humans on any level, he needed to stop thinking like a Quellan who'd been carefully protected and optimized for success. He needed to think like a human child who'd been given a two-wheel death trap and told to figure it out. The simulation loaded around him. Urban environment hostile. Targets, multiple objectives, friendly fire enabled, all the things that had destroyed him 17 times music before. But this time, as the countdown began, Zip asked himself one simple question: what would a human child do? The answer came immediately: something reckless that barely works but gets the job done. The simulation started. Zip didn't analyze the optimal path, didn't calculate risk probabilities, didn't plan out a careful approach that minimized danger. Instead, he just moved. A hostile drone appeared on his left. His training said to take cover. Assess. And GT, music. And GT, and return fire strategically. His newfound human childhood logic said. Grab something and throw it. He grabbed a piece of debris and hurled it. With all four arms, the throw was terrible, unbalanced, poorly aimed way. Too much force, the debris sailed past. The drone music bounced off a wall, ricocheted at a completely unpredictable angle and smashed into the drone purely by accident. Target eliminated. Zip muttered, "That's how dodgeball works." He kept moving, didn't overthink. It didn't second guess, just committed to forward momentum like a kid on a bike who just realized their training wheels were gone. You either kept moving or you fell, so you might as well keep moving. Another obstacle, a gap between buildings, too far to jump music safely. The Quellan approach was to find another route, the human approach. Try it anyway and hope physics music is feeling generous today. Zip backed up, got a running start and launched himself across the gap with all three legs. He didn't make it gracefully. Crashed into the far edge, scrabbled music for purchase with all four arms. Nearly fell, pulled himself up through sheer panic determination. He made it. That's the playground, he gasped. Fall, panic, don't die, keep going. The simulation threw more challenges at him. Each time Zip ignored every instinct his careful, safety-oriented upbringing had given him. Instead, he channeled pure human childhood energy. See a locked door, don't hack it. Carefully, just blast it and deal with whatever's on the other side. See a heavily armed enemy, don't engage. Tactically throw something at them and rush while they're confused. See a restricted area warning. That's just a suggestion, really. Suggestions can be ignored. His performance was objectively terrible by Quellan standards, sloppy, inefficient, dangerous. He took hits that he could have avoided, made choices that increased risk for no logical reason, survived situations through sheer luck and stubborn refusal to stay down. But he was moving, he was progressing. And GT, music. And GT. He wasn't overthinking himself into paralysis. The final objective appeared. Retrieve the data core from a heavily defended position. 3 turrets, 2 patrol drones, laser grids, the works. Impossible to approach without being detected. The smart move was to disable the defenses first. Zip looked at it and thought, what would Jake Reeves do? The answer was obvious, something incredibly stupid that somehow works. Anyway, he grabbed a larger piece of debris, something that should have been too heavy for him to lift, but adrenaline is a hell of a thing, and just threw it at the music nearest turret. As hard as he could, didn't aim carefully, didn't plan the angle, just full music force yeeted it with all 4 arms. The debris smashed into the turret, which exploded more dramatically than it probably should have, which set off a chain reaction with the other turrets, which created enough chaos that the patrol drones' targeting systems got confused, which gave Zip approximately 4 seconds music to sprint through the laser grid, getting hit twice but not enough to stop him. Grab the data core and dive behind cover. Not graceful, not optimal, not even remotely by the book, but effective. Mission status complete. Time 7 minutes 12 seconds. Injuries sustained, moderate. Performance rating unconventional but successful. Zip lay on his back, all 4 arms spread out, breathing hard. He'd done it. He'd actually done it by thinking like a human child. An hour later, Zip found Jake in the combat sim observation room, watching another cadet run through training bay 8. I passed, Zip announced. Jake turned grinning. Hey, nice, I knew you had it in you. I passed, Zip repeated by ignoring. Approximately 18 years of careful education, and instead asking myself what a traumatized human child would do in every situation. Traumatized is a strong word. You threw yourself off ramps on bicycles. Okay, fair, Jake. Pulled up Zip's performance data. Oh, man, look at this. You just threw debris at everything. That's amazing. It's objectively terrible technique. Yeah. But it worked. And GT, music. And GT, that's the important part, Jake. Scrolled through the performance breakdown, nodding appreciatively. See, this is what I was trying to explain. Humans don't succeed because we're better trained or more skilled. We succeed because we're willing to try things that are obviously bad ideas. And GT, music. And GT, and just see what happens. That's not a survival strategy. That's barely controlled chaos, barely controlled. Chaos has won us a lot of battles. Though, Jake pointed music at the screen. Look at this moment. You got detected by the patrol drones, and instead of retreating like your supposed music, you just charged them. That's pure human childhood logic. When in doubt, commit music harder. Zip slumped into a chair, all four arms draped over the armrests. I don't understand how your species survived to develop spaceflight music. By all logical predictions, you should have gone extinct from playground accidents alone. I mean, some kids didn't make it, Jake admitted with a shrug, but enough of us survived to pass music on the genes for tries dangerous things and occasionally succeeds. Natural selection favored the lucky idiots. Lucky idiots, Zip repeated. That's what conquered half the galaxy. Lucky idiots. Hey, we prefer boldly adaptable risk takers, but yeah, essentially. Jake sat down next to him. Want to know the real secret? There's more. The secret isn't that we're not afraid of danger. We are. Every human kid who climbed too high on the monkey bars or went too fast on their bike felt that fear. Jake leaned back, staring at the ceiling. The secret is that we learned early that being afraid doesn't mean you stop. It means you're doing something that matters. Music. Something with stakes. Zip turned to look at him with all his eye stalks. You're telling me that humanity's greatest military advantage is a fundamental misunderstanding of appropriate fear responses? Not a misunderstanding, more like a rejection of letting fear make decisions for us. Jake met his gaze. Every human gets scared, but we grew up pushing through it. Fell off the bike, get back on. Got hit in dodgeball, get back in the game. Failed to jump off the ramp, try again with a longer ramp. Fear tells you something's dangerous. Courage is doing it anyway. That's Zip struggled to find words. That's actually somewhat profound. Yeah. Well, don't spread it around. Ruins our reputation as chaotic idiots. Jake grinned. But seriously, you did good today. You figured out what most species never learn. Sometimes the right answer is the stupid answer executed with complete commitment. Zip thought about this, about bikes and playgrounds, and dodgeball and mystery meat, about 18 years of human childhood that looked like systematic trauma but was actually systematic preparation, not for war specifically, but for life in a universe that didn't care about your safety protocols or your carefully calculated risk assessments. I have a question. Zip said finally. Shoot, what's the difference between bravery and stupidity? Jake considered this for a moment, timing mostly, if it works. And GT, music. And GT, it's bravery. If it doesn't, it's stupidity. But you won't know which one it is until you try. So every brave action is potentially music, stupid. And every stupid action is potentially brave. Now you're thinking like a human. Jake stood up, stretching. Come on, let's get some food. I hear they're serving something called protein surprise today. Please tell me the surprise isn't food poisoning. Only one way to find out. Zip followed him toward the mess hall, shaking his head with all three heads. Wait, no, just the one head, but all four arms gesturing in exasperation. You know what the worst part is? What's that? I'm actually starting to understand your species, and that's somehow more terrifying than not understanding you. Jake laughed. Welcome to the human experience, buddy. Nothing makes sense. And GT, music. And GT, everything's dangerous, and we're all just making it up as we go along. Making it up as you go along, Zip repeated. Is that the official human strategy? It's worked pretty well so far. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before Zip spoke again. Jake. Yeah. Tomorrow. And GT, music. And GT, can you tell me about human social interactions? Because I've been watching humans in the common areas, and I'm genuinely concerned about what I'm seeing. Jake's grin widened. Oh man. You mean like how we insult our friends as a sign of affection? Yes, exactly. That. Why do you do that? Well, it all starts in childhood. Of course it does. Later that evening, Zip sat in his quarters writing a message to the Quellen Council of Education. Esteemed council members, after extensive research into human development practices, I regret to inform you that our entire approach to childhood safety may be fundamentally flawed, not because it fails to protect our young, it succeeds admirably at that, but because it fails to prepare them for a universe that does not value safety over capability. Humans' music do not train their children for war. They simply allow childhood to be dangerous, uncomfortable, and occasionally painful. They music call it building character. The rest of us would call it surviving, despite terrible supervision, but the results speak for themselves. Music. Human cadets dominate every physical trial, excel in crisis situations, and approach danger with what can only be described as enthusiastic incompetence. That somehow produces favorable outcomes. I'm not suggesting we adopt their methods. The legal liability alone would bankrupt our entire civilization. But perhaps we should consider that true readiness comes not from eliminating danger, but from learning to navigate it. Or perhaps humans are simply insane, and we should accept that we'll never fully understand them. I honestly cannot tell which interpretation is correct. Respectfully submitted, Cadet Zip. P.S. They have something called summer camp that I'm told involves building character in wilderness settings. I'm almost afraid to music. Ask for details. He sent the message and settled into his rest pod, thinking about tomorrow's training for the first time since arriving at the academy. He wasn't dreading it. He was actually kind of looking forward to it, not because he'd suddenly become fearless or skilled, but because he'd learned that maybe just Maybe being a little bit reckless and music a lot committed was more valuable than being perfectly safe and completely unprepared. Humans called it childhood. Zip was starting to think of it as combat training you didn't know you were receiving, and honestly that was the most terrifying and brilliant strategy he'd ever encountered. His final thought before sleep was simple. Humans don't have a survival instinct. They have a try it and see what happens instinct. That explains so much. And it explains why they're winning.